Hola amores, welcome back to my channel and to another VBX Familia Speaks video. So, first things first, as y'all can see, I am rocking this makeup look. It is the first look of my Winter Wonders series, which I will be uploading the tutorial for after this. Now, I did have a couple men on some previous videos comment that my makeup was either too much or that it was too heavy, okay? So, y'all must be kind of new around here, okay? So, to any of you men out there that don't already know, I do makeup. I started my channel with the purpose of doing makeup, okay? So, some of my looks are gonna be very dramatic, all right? They're not your everyday wear out to the store type of makeup, such as this one, okay? And that is on purpose, all right? I like to play with color. I like to be dramatic with my makeup sometimes. So yeah, I mean, that just is what it is. So to all of you newer guys out there, I would suggest that you just get used to it. Okay. Second, I just wanted to give you guys a quick little rundown of the pending video requests that I still have. So I have a video requested on the poles of Haiti, which I actually already did. I just have to upload it. Reacting to Dominican ancestry DNA videos, so that should be interesting. I have another one requested on the Samana Americans of DR, Venezuelans in Trinidad, comparing West Indian and Latin American culture. So that's one that's pretty broad, as you know, there isn't just one West Indian culture or one Latin American culture, so I'm not quite sure how I would break that down. So if you guys have any suggestions on how I could go about doing that video, let me know. Another one on Latin freestyle music of the 80s, one on the Garifuna people, Afro-Panamanians, Black love among successful Black men and Black women, kind of to counteract the video I did before on like being pro-Black while marrying white, so showing the opposite of that. Another one on Dominican, Puerto Rican, and Cuban communities in the U.S., and kind of like the towns and neighborhoods apart from the usual New York and Florida. Then I had a couple music of the Americas videos. So I had one requested on compa, which is Haitian, dance hall. I'm also going to do reggaeton. I want to do cumbia, punta, palo from DR. And then I was also thinking to maybe do go-go, just because, you know, I am from the DMV. So I figured why not do a style of music that is actually native to the DC area. So yeah, that's that. Now, moving on to the actual topic of this video. So I had someone email me, shout out to the person that requested this. I'm assuming you're one of my newer subscribers, as I have already kind of touched on these things, but of course I haven't done like a whole video dedicated just to it. But they basically asked, can you talk about how your interactions have been with African American women / Black people? Do Black people accept you as part of their community? Do you use the term Afro-Latina? Why or why not? Are the terms Hispanic or Latinx offensive in any way? Okay, so a lot to talk about there. And then the last part was to talk about some of my favorite Hispanic hair or makeup products, but that I would do as a separate video. So, before I get started, yeah, I know I gotta do my disclaimers, but let me just say, I can only speak from my personal experience, okay? Just mine. Me. Mio. Yo. Moi. Okay? Me. Alright? I don't speak for all Dominicans, just like I can't speak for all Black people or African Americans, alright? I can only speak on the relationships and interactions that I have had, okay? I don't want nobody else coming under my video talking about these videos are just trying to portray this mythical relationship between Blacks and Latinos, ignoring the stark cultural differences. I don't want to hear that shit, all right? Or, if only you knew what Black women really think about y'all Latinas, like, bro, miss me with it, all right? Miss me with it. Like, yes, I've seen some of the negative videos. I've seen some of the negative comments online. Yes, I've seen them online. However, that is not my real life, okay? What you see online doesn't always depict reality, all right? So just had to get that out the way because I don't want the nonsense comments, all right, coming over here. Anyway, so when it comes to my relationship, more specifically with Black women, Now I might sound like a broken record to some of my older subscribers, because like I said, I have kind of touched on this before, but to the newer people out there, I have mentioned before that growing up, the majority of my friends, specifically my female friends, were Black women, were African American women. Like I've also said a bunch of times, I didn't grow up in an area that had a lot of Caribbean Latinos. So, I didn't really have many Dominican friends or Puerto Rican friends, definitely no Cubans. Like, I know like one or two around here. And the majority of the Hispanics were Central American. So, apart from one of my very best friends who is Salvadorian, I didn't really make friends with them a whole lot. And I think part of that is because a lot of them thought that I was Black or African American, so they wouldn't really approach me or befriend me or try to befriend me, except for my one best friend who happens to hang with a lot of Black people. So I don't know, maybe that's why, I don't know. She became best friends with me, even though I'm Dominican, but whatever. So I guess I'll kind of go like chronologically into my friendships, but my longest standing friendship to this day is a Black girl. Well, she's half Black American and half Black Cuban. But she has, none of her Cuban family lives around here, and her father is the Cuban one, and he pretty much kind of assimilated into Black American culture. So culturally, I would say she's definitely very much more American than she is Cuban. But anyway, yeah, so we've been friends literally since we were babies. Her father and my father were like best friends. And then her mom, the Black one, and my mom became friends. And so by default, we became friends. And we've been friends literally our whole lives. So my first real interactions that I remember with like Black people as a whole came from being around her mother's side of the family. So I remember from very young, her family, her mom's side, they would invite my family to like their family gatherings and stuff. And like I said, that was like my first experiences of being around like a lot of Black people and going to the cookouts and the parties and stuff like that. And just keeping it totally honest, I do recall as a kid, I would feel a little odd or slightly out of place, just because I think at that age, like the differences between like being around my Dominican family and being at a Dominican party and listening to Dominican music versus being around a whole lot of Black Americans, it was quite apparent to me at that age. So I would feel a little like out of place, but I get over it once I started playing with like the kids and stuff. But despite that, like it was always nothing but love from her mom's side of the family towards my parents. And me and my sister, like they always treated us like family. And I remember like as we got a little older, some of my friends' cousins, her Black cousins, started calling my parents aunt and uncle. Like they would call my mom Aunt Lucy and my dad Uncle Chu. 'Cause Chu, that's my dad's nickname since from when he was in DR. They call him Chu. So they would be like, yo, what's up, Uncle Chu, blah, blah, blah. And so in that sense, they always, embraced us and treated us as one of them. So from very early on, I guess you could say my interactions or experiences with Black Americans, was pretty positive. And my dad, he's the type of person like he gets along with everybody. Everybody likes my dad, and he doesn't care if you're a Black American or a freaking like white redneck. If you're cool with him, he's cool with you. So I think I kind of got that from him as well. So as I got into elementary school, I remember from each grade, my best friends that I had were an African American girl, a Korean girl, and then a Dominican girl. We were like the only two Dominicans in my elementary school. And then in sixth grade, I would meet my other best friend who's Salvadorian. But I remember from very early on though, my Black best friend, she was the one that I kind of remained friends for the longest throughout elementary school. And now, mind you, I was very shy as a kid, very shy. So I wasn't one to like approach other girls to become friends with them. Like they would approach me. And even from very young, it was very much my experience that the black girls would come to me and try to be my friend. And so, from like a very young age, I've kind of always had that experience with, black girls where, I mean, it's not like they knew I was Dominican. I mean, if anything, I mean, as simple as kids' minds are, I think they just saw somebody else that they felt looked like them. And so they approached me, and next thing you know, we're like best friends. Now, while I was in elementary school, or no, going into middle school, my younger sister, she befriended this black girl, and they became like really, really close. And then by default, I befriended that girl's sister. So we became like, it was like the four of us. They were younger, they're all younger than me, but we became very close, to the point where they would travel with me and my family to DR like almost every summer. Like they've been with us to DR like 3 or 4 times. And they became very immersed into like Dominican culture, and they learned a lot of Spanish. And I mean, when they would go to DR, people wouldn't really even know that they weren't Dominican until they started talking, and they noticed they had like an accent or that they didn't fully understand. But even with them, like, I would sometimes go with them to like their family events, or like they would sometimes invite us to their church, which the black church experience is very interesting. Definitely not what I was used to. That was another one of those situations where I would feel a little like out of place being in like the black church, but I mean, it was still cool nonetheless. Everybody always treated me with love. So, and that is another friendship that to this day, we're still super cool. Me with the girl's sister. And then, so going into middle school, high school, especially high school, I've mentioned a few times before that I was in like a clique or whatever. It was very like, just very high schoolish. Like we had a name for our crew. We had nicknames. My nickname was actually Negra, okay? Because I've mentioned before that my mom, she calls me Negra. Like, so when my friends would come to my house, they would hear my mom calling me Negra. So they would, they eventually kind of adopted it and started calling me that. So they'd be like, they see me on the hallways, be like, hey Negra, blah, blah, blah. So, and I mean, that might sound weird to some of you guys, but in my experience, being called Negra or Negro is not offensive. It's many times used as a term of endearment. That's how my mom has always used it towards me. So I wore my nickname with pride. That's all I can really say about that. But anyway, so we were a group of like 10 girls, and they were all black except for my my friend who's Salvadorian. She was part of our group as well. So as you can imagine, she kind of stood out because she was like the only light-skinned girl. But they were all black. Now, they weren't all black American though. 2 of them were black Americans. 2 of them were half black, half Indian from India. And then there were 3 who were Sudanese, because there is quite a big Sudanese community here in Northern VA. One was from Eritrea, and the last one was Congolese. So yeah, they were all black. And it was never my experience. This whole thing you see online these days, especially here on YouTube, that black people just want you to identify as black, and they want to ignore your cultural differences and this and that. Like, that was never my experience, especially because I was in a group, although everyone was black, but they were of different cultures. So that was never our experience. Now, while everyone saw each other as black women, and I'm assuming they saw me as just another black girl, well, not just another black girl, but they saw me as black. But at the same time, they never dismissed my my cultural identity. Like, they always referred to me as Dominican. Everybody was like, yeah, Christina, she's Dominican. You know, so and so, she's Sudanese. The African American ones, well, they would just identify as black. But yeah, so you know, this whole African American is trying to strip us of our cultural identity. That was just never my experience, okay? So another thing, so all throughout high school, I mean, I don't know, I just never really had negative experiences with African Americans, male or female. And now the one negative experience I can say, which I mentioned a while back in another video, and it wasn't even like directly to me, was I remember in high school there was like this group of black girls, and one of my friends told me that they were talking about me, but they were talking about my hair, and they were saying, oh, her hair is fake, oh, you can see where the tracks in her hair start, blah blah blah. And so one of my very good friends, who's, you know, black American, she was like trying to defend me or whatever, and she was like, Christina's Dominican, that's her real hair, you know, whatever. But I was just kind of like, wait, what you mean you can see where the tracks start? Like, this is all my hair, what are you talking about? Well, I don't know, they were just hating for whatever reason, and I like never interacted with these girls. Now, they were the ghetto girls of the school, not to sound, you know, whatever, but that was kind of like how they were viewed. For whatever reason, they spotted me. Again, I never interacted with those girls, but they just decided to start talking shit about my hair. And so my one friend, you know, she defended me, and then later she told me. I was kind of like, dang, really? All right. But besides that, yeah, never had no negative experiences. So could you say that they accepted me as part of their community? I guess it depends what you mean by that, because I mean, it's not like they saw me as being just another like African American, because obviously I'm not African American. Like I said, they've always like respected my culture and stuff like that, and in that regards, they knew that I was different than them, but at the same time, they never treated me as different, if that makes sense. Like, at the end of the day, we were all just friends, despite our cultural differences. We were all just cool with each other. And like I said, anytime that I went to any of my friends' like family events and stuff like that, like, their families were always super nice towards me. They didn't treat me differently for being Dominican. So now, had I been a more lighter skinned, white passing Dominican, can I say that my experience would have been the same? Possibly not, okay? And that's just me keeping it totally honest. Like, I'm not going to sit here and act like my skin tone hasn't played a role or still doesn't play a role when it comes to my friendships, okay? And it kind of goes with like what I said in my dating preferences video, how I think, you know, it's just kind of natural for us to, even if we don't at first, but to eventually kind of like be drawn to people that look like us, or that we feel that we can see ourselves in. And so I feel like that's part of what has always drawn Black girls to me, or Black women to me, and vice versa. Like it was just always a lot easier for me to befriend an African American than it would be a white American. Now, in elementary school, I did have a good friend actually that was a white girl, but once I got older, I don't know, it just wasn't happening. Like, to this day, I have like no white friends. And it's not because I don't want any, you know, I have nothing against white people or white Americans, but they just don't approach me. The girls, the women, they don't approach me. But Black women, on the other hand, they've always approached me. And I do think that a lot of it has to do with how I look. They look at me and see another Black girl, you know, because I mean, it's not like they know off the bat that I'm Dominican. They see my skin color, and you know, at the end of the day, like, skin color, it matters. It matters. I'm not gonna sit here and act like it doesn't. It's not the end all be all, but for a lot of people, it matters. So yeah, even like when it comes to makeup, like a lot of the makeup artists and makeup enthusiasts that I watch and that I follow are Black women. They're Black American women. Why? Because I feel that I can relate more to them. I feel that I can, especially when it comes to makeup, like I can see more of myself in a Black woman than I will ever in a white woman, you know? And so, like, even on my makeup page, like on Instagram, a lot of the women that follow me, like, I always look back at the pages of the people that follow me, and they're usually Black women. Why? Because they see me and see another Black woman. So, you know, that's where I feel like that comes from. And at the end of the day, despite whatever cultural differences we may have, you know, I've never had an issue because of it. And if anything, my Black friends, including the male ones, they've always been very, like, open to wanting to learn more about my culture and, you know, wanting to try out Dominican food and learn how to dance Dominican music. I mean, some of my girlfriends now, like, when they go out, like, people think that they're Dominican, you know, because they've been rolling with me and my family for so long, and they've always seen them around. So, you know, it's just one of those things. Yeah, I don't have issues with Black people in my daily life. So that is that. Now, moving on to the second part, my opinions on all of these labels. So starting with the Afro-Latino term. So those of you that have been listening to me for a while, y'all know that I've kind of gone back and forth with that label. Now, when it first started getting really big and around the time that I kind of started calling myself that, I did it more so because, you know, as more and more people started speaking up about this Afro-Latino identity and what that meant to them and their experiences, I felt like, I can kind of relate to some of the things that they're saying. Because a lot of them, especially those that have grown up in the U.S., you know, they spoke about having their Latinidad questioned just because they look Black. You know, people not thinking that they're Latino. People not really believing that they're Latino. People acting like just because you're Black, you can't be Latino, you know? Or people being like, oh, you really Latino? Speak Spanish, you know? Things like that. That is something that I've experienced. So, you know, I did start calling myself that at one point. But me being the thinker that I am, eventually I started to think like, well, wait. Because a lot of what Afro-Latinos speak about is wanting to be recognized as being Latino or Latina or Latinx, if you use the Latinx, without being questioned. And you know, they constantly talk about how like Latinos come in all shades and this and that. So I was like, okay, so if what we're fighting for is to simply be seen as Latinos without having our Latinidad questioned, then shouldn't we just be calling ourselves Latinos? So that people get used to seeing the dark skin, you know, and the kinky hair attached to that Latino label. So that's kind of where, like, I don't know, my thinking kind of switched a little bit. And so I kind of stopped calling myself that. But even still, I recognize that, sure, we could all just start calling ourselves Latinos and leave it at that. But at the same time, I recognize that sometimes in order to address these certain issues or things that a particular subgroup is experiencing, you kind of have to make that distinction. So in that way, I understand why some people feel the need to use the Afro prefix, because if not, how else are you going to address the things that Black Latinos experience? And it kind of goes back to, like, because I questioned this one time in a video a long time ago, and I asked African Americans this, and I asked, you know, African Americans, like, do you guys think if you started calling yourselves just Americans, would that maybe be a step towards achieving some type of equality in this country? And, you know, I received like mixed responses, but something that kind of reoccurred was, well, if you do that, then the issues that are specific to Black people are going to kind of be glossed over. So, you know, I think it is kind of the same thing when it comes to the whole Afro-Latino thing. Now, so while I'm not currently calling myself an Afro-Latina, you know, I don't knock anyone that does. You know, I follow a bunch of Afro-Latino pages, and, you know, it is nice to see Latinos, you know, embracing that aspect of their identity, embracing those African roots and stuff like that. So while I don't call myself an Afro-Latina, at the same time, I don't have an issue calling myself or being referred to as a Black Latina or a Black Dominican, because at the end of the day, while I am a mixed race person, I mean, y'all have seen my ancestry results. I'm like literally half sub-Saharan African, half not. So I'm almost like biracial. Well, with the exception of like the Native American DNA. So I'm mixed. However, I am very aware of how I look, okay? This melanin is quite popping, all right? Hashtag Morena Magic, that's me, okay? So, you know, I can go around and talk all day about how I'm mixed, which, you know, I embrace that I am mixed. I embrace all of that I'm mixed with, you know, but I'm aware of how I look. And at the end of the day, in my experience up until now in my life, like I've never not been seen as a Black girl. Now, by Black, I don't necessarily mean like African American, but just any type of Black ethnicity. Like I've said a billion times, especially in this area, I get mistaken for Ethiopian all the time. You know, so whatever it is that people are guessing is always some type of Black ethnicity. Like I'm never going to be mistaken for some type of European or something, you know, even though I have quite a bit of European. But, and granted, you know, I'm not the darkest person out there. And, you know, I don't have the most stereotypical African features, but, you know, my skin precedes me. Okay. So when people see brown, they think Black. And so that has always been my experience. I mean, y'all have seen my family. I come from a paternal line of Black Dominican men, you know, so there is no denying my Africanness or my Blackness, you know. It's a part of who I am, a big part of who I am, and I fully embrace it. And like I've also said a bunch of times before, even among Dominicans have always called me Morena. They've always called me Negra. Like, so, you know, it is what it is. Like, I don't have any issue being called Morena or Negra. I embrace that. So I have no issue with that. Now, as far as the terms Hispanic or Latinx, Latino, whatever, I did briefly talk about this at the beginning of Hispanic Heritage Month because there has been a lot of conversation among some of the younger generation Latinos, especially around these labels. As I've also said, as more Latinos become woke, there has kind of been a pushback with using some of these labels. Now, I think more of the pushback comes from using the term Hispanic than Latino. I think more are okay with using Latino or Latinx. Not really my cup of tea. But yeah, the Hispanic label, I feel like more people are pushing back against using it because of its ties to Spain and colonization, and people don't want to be you know, associated with their colonizer, as they put it, and so they're dismissing the Hispanic label and maybe just moving more towards calling themselves Latinx, because to a lot of people, the word Latinx or Latino or Latina, it's more about being a descendant of Latin America. And I mean, that's kind of how I use the word Latino or Latina too. It means you're a descendant of Latin America. So, you know, now as far as the term Hispanic, personally, I don't find it offensive. For me, I've always kind of seen it more in the literal sense of being Hispanic means coming from a Spanish-speaking country. So, of course, Spain is included in that, as well as all the Latin American countries that speak Spanish. So, I mean, I don't know. I refer to myself as Hispanic, but for those that don't want to use it anymore, I mean, that's their choice. That's fine. I personally don't really find it offensive. Same with Latino or Latina. I don't find it offensive either. Now I know there's a lot that say you guys are basically still holding on or fighting over your colonizers' labels, and these names were given to you by the enslaver and blah blah blah, which, you know, I get it. But at the same time, I feel like at this point in time, in the 21st century, these names, they're not just labels. Like at this point in time, there's actual cultures behind these labels now. So from that sense, I don't really find it offensive to use them. for example, like when you think of like Latino genres of music, just right off the top of your head, what do you think of? Salsa, merengue, cumbia, bachata, you know, reggaeton. And these are all genres that have heavy African influence. So the way I see it is, you know, these words Latino, or even a lot of our nationalities, like they weren't just created by Europeans. Like African people contributed a lot towards these cultures, a lot towards these genres of music and things that we associate with being Latino. So in that sense, I feel like, you know, if my African ancestors contributed towards these things, like why would I not claim that? You know, I don't know if that's making sense. Or like, for example, I had someone argue with me kind of recently under one of my videos, saying that like, oh, you Dominicans, y'all are all lost. Even calling yourself Dominican, that was given to you by the colonizer. Now, I don't know where this guy was from. His username says something Taino. So maybe he was some type of Caribbean. I don't know. I mean, obviously he wasn't Dominican, since he was saying, oh, y'all Dominicans are lost. So I don't know where he was from. But I was just kind of like, okay, I mean, I see where you're going with that. But to me, when I think of the word Dominican, when I think of that nationality, one of the first things that comes to mind is Black people. Now, of course, before any Dominicans come for me, I'm not saying that the DR is a Black country, but there are a lot of melanated people in DR. So, and I mean, and I think those African roots are very much a part of our identity. So I don't have a problem calling myself Dominican. You know, at the end of the day, that is my culture. That is where my roots come from. Well, my more immediate roots, not going all the way back to like the European and African. So I personally don't have an issue. And like the other part of that is like, even among us Latinos, you know, even though we have a lot of cultural differences among each other, I do feel though, like I've always kind of felt like that Latino label, it does kind of bond us to each other in a way. Same with the Hispanic thing. Even though some may not approach you or mess with you because of how you look, like for example, in my experience, some of these Central Americans wouldn't really approach me because they thought that I was Black. But for some of them though, once they found out I was Dominican, their tune did kind of change. They were kind of like, oh, okay, oh, you speak Spanish, blah blah blah. So it's like a whole different tune. But I do think a lot of times that that Hispanic identity, that Latin identity, it does kind of create like this invisible bond among a lot of us, you know. So in that sense, I mean, like I said, I don't find it offensive. Some might think I'm still colonized in my mind. I don't know, but I view things kind of differently sometimes. So in my opinion, I don't find them offensive. While I understand why some people now may not want to use them, and you know, that's totally fine. That's their right if they feel that way. That's not how I feel. So I don't know. I don't feel any type of way about calling myself Latina, because at the end of the day, that's what I am. I am a descendant of a Latin American country. My culture is a Latin culture. Well, Latin in the sense of that it comes from Latin America, but of course the culture itself is a mix of different things. So yeah, before this video gets too long, that was my opinions on that. So as always, you know, leave your thoughts and opinions down below, whether you want to comment on the first part of the video. If you're a Black woman, what is your experience with Latinas? Or if you're a Latina, what's your experiences with Black women? Or if you want to, if you're Latino and you have your thoughts on the different labels, or even if you're not Latino, whatever, you know, anybody can comment. So that was it for this video, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.